That's right. You wanted the best. You got it. We are going to have a rock and roll party tonight. As always, I am Christian Bladt. And with me is the CEO of Metal Blade Records and the host of 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal, which, by the way, you can subscribe to that everywhere you find podcasts. Brian Slagel, how are you, sir?
I am good. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
And there's a Hulu show you're a part of. We were literally just talking about it, and I should have said, hey, what's it called? And I forgot to ask you that.
Yeah, it's called Into the Void. It drops on September 22nd on Hulu, Craven, Canada, and hopefully elsewhere as well. And it's a lot of cool documentary stuff, Randy Rhoads, and a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So Pantera one's pretty amazing.
I can't wait to check it out over there on Hulu in the US. And if we're going to talk about Kiss, there's always somebody that I want to go to first. From the Three Sides of the Coin podcast, Mark Chicchini. Mark, thank you for being here.
Hello from Detroit Rock City. Very excited and honored to be on this panel with these great group of gentlemen. So looking forward to digging into my favorite album of all time.
Yes, we have a great group of gentlemen and comedian Don Jamieson, whose latest album, No Sleep Till McSorley's, is also available in a video version on his YouTube. Don, the last time we did a show together, the outside world didn't really cooperate with us. The last time I had Don on one of my shows, we found out that Ozzy had passed away. So I hope the world can stay calm for this hour.
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. But we did get to break the news to some people, and man, not to get into it, but what a way to go out. God bless Ozzy, man.
Yeah, I was on with you and Craig Gass, and I had literally pulled like 20 Kiss clips from interviews, and I was like, well, guess we're talking about Ozzy, so we appreciate you being here. And of course, he was showing us some of his upcoming tomes before we started, a mere 1,000 pages that are going to be on the market soon. Martin Popoff, the author of more than 130. I always want to get the number right, but it's hard to keep count because there's two more you just showed us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I don't know what I'm going to have if I have anything intelligent to say, but we'll
well,
you always have something intelligent to say. Come on.
Yeah, on 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal, Brian always feels like we should start calling you the professor, or at least get you one of those. The doctor. Yeah, get you one of those like graduate hats with the tassel hanging from it. One of those things.
Very cool.
So we're here to talk about, shockingly, the 50th anniversary of Kiss Alive. I do want to spend just a few quick minutes on the 50th anniversary of Dress to Kill, which was 6 months earlier. And
German version.
Oh, you know what? I see that now that I grabbed it without the lightning bolt S's. Yeah. So that for our visual audience, yeah, you get to see that's right. They don't like that logo in some places in Europe, do they, Brian?
Not in Germany.
I'll sort of go down the list quickly, and then we'll move on to Kiss Alive. But Brian, were you already a Kiss fan when Dress to Kill came out?
Well, that's when I became a Kiss fan. I was lucky enough growing up in Los Angeles, California. We had an FM radio station called K-West, and that's how I first discovered UFO, Judas Priest, so many bands. And that's where I first discovered Kiss, because they were playing Rock and Roll All Night, the studio version. I'm like, oh, what is this? And I went out and bought all three records, Dress to Kill, the first record, and Hotter Than Hell. And that's when Kiss became my favorite band.
And Mark, in a lot of ways, I like to think of you as being born a Kiss fan, except, of course, they weren't around yet. So were you already a fan when Dress to Kill came out?
I was. My claim to fame is I have an older brother and an older sister. And in Detroit here, Kiss was big news fairly early on. I remember the first time that I saw their faces. They played at Fraser Hockeyland. And I still play hockey. I'm in my 60s, and I've been playing hockey since I was a young guy. And I remember they played there, and I just remember seeing the image. And by the fall of '74, I was already really into music. My claim to fame is my first rock record was "Not Fragile" by Bachman Turner Overdrive, and that was the kind of music I liked. And I remember my brother got Hotter Than Hell in the fall of '74, and by the time Dress to Kill came up, it was like, okay, this is it, man. and I've been a fan ever since. So
Right. Yeah. Me coming into the equation later, I heard most of the live versions before I heard the studio versions in here. And I'd be doing a disservice to your audience if I didn't point out the three sides of the coin version of that photo from Dress to Kill,
Yes.
where all of you, including the fourth side of the coin, Lisa, actually posed in that spot in New York City. Right, Mark?
Yeah, but just so you know, that's photoshopped.
No, I know, but I love the picture.
I was gonna say I had my apartment in New York that I had for like 10 years was about a block away, and none of those places were there in the 2000s that are behind you guys.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what? I've been there, obviously, that spot many
Sure.
times, but that picture was taken at the 2018 Atlanta Kiss Expo. That's where we took that picture.
Nice.
Yeah, just a couple blocks away. It's fine, Mark. There's nothing
But it
to
was,
worry
it wasn't locally here. That's for sure. So.
And Martin, at what point do you hear Dress to Kill? How aware of Kiss were you? Did you hear it in 1975, or when did you come across this one?
Yes, absolutely. I was a fan right from the debut. The debut came to town, got that. And I was trying to think. I think the earliest band that I was on board for the debut was probably BTO. But Kiss and Rush are the ones I always kind of remember because they're both 74. So yeah, on board for the debut. And so we were fans, right through Hotter Than Hell. And then this comes out. I remember of my friends said I was the first one to get Dress to Kill. So that was the quote unquote my album. That was the one I had to champion and say, no, this is the best one. This is the best one, because I was the keeper of the Dress to Kill. So I remember getting it and thinking it was basically as good as the other ones. I know everybody complains now about the too polite production on it, but that never bothered us at the time. It was heavy enough, kind of thing. So yeah, on board since the beginning.
And Jameson, at what point do you hear Dress to Kill?
Well, not till well after, because my first Kiss album that I ever heard was Kiss Alive 2. So, I grew up and then I went to One right after that. And so going back and listening to the studio albums was quite the shock, because I was completely immersed in Kiss from the two live albums, and to hear the production on those albums, unlike Martin, I was like, oh my God, this is not very good. I was, those concert versions to me are the definitive versions of the songs. And but then of course, even later in life, when I lived in New York City, the first couple of places I had to go were to find this corner, and then the Physical Graffiti building.
Oh yeah, of course.
which I lived near for about 8 years until I realized it was right in my neighborhood.
I'll go straight to the source. Mark, when they put out that collection, the originals, how much remixing and remastering did they do? Are those really that different, or are they still pretty close to the original?
Hold on, the originals when they
wasn't that when they put out the first?
That's just the studio albums all repackaged.
Right, that's what I'm saying, because Don's kind of talking about hearing the production on the first three studio albums, and
I can answer that real quick. They only they only remastered them. They didn't remix them.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
That's all they did. All right. See, I was giving them too much credit, but I do think Strutter 78 has a little bit more punch.
That's from Double Platinum.
Platinum. Yeah.
Yes.
That was remixed.
Yes.
That was a whole new recording. That was a whole different.
Yeah,
that wasn't the same recording from the debut album. That was
which we did not need.
Amen.
I have a beat up, ripped long box 8-track version of Kiss Originals printed in Canada. People tell me, "Oh wow, that's super rare," kind of thing. But it's beat to hell.
I do love a nice long box for CDs. And Mark, I know how much this is going to kill you to hear me say this. I've said this before on my show. I've said this before to you. The first Kiss album I bought new was, of course, Hot in the Shade on cassette.
Oh, look at the time. It's been great, guys.
But I had already caught up to a lot. My friend Ronnie in high school, his uncle had like everything. And so I was going back and listening completely out of order. I don't even think I realized that there were two albums in 1976, because for whatever reason, he didn't have Rock and Roll Over anymore. I just figured like, okay, Destroyer Then Love Gun. Nope. So that was a fun find for me. But, so some of us experience Kiss Alive the way it was intended to be on cassette. But I think I might be in the minority there. I saw you had a moment ago, Mark. Oh, yeah. See, look. So Don's got the vinyl, and I think, Mark, you had some vinyl too.
Yes.
Got a vinyl here. Holding
Okay.
up.
All right, Brian, if you don't have the vinyl.
Well, I'm in Dallas, so I don't have my vinyl collection here. So
Hi, Brian.
trust me, I have the original version that I bought when it came out and listened to in my room for probably about 4 weeks straight, other than having to go to school and baseball practice.
Yeah, and in the day of records, you couldn't figure out a way to listen to your music at school.
Sadly, no.
I could go with my Walkman, but yeah, that's not as easily done. So it comes out, and Brian, had you seen them live, or was hearing them live on Kiss Alive the first time you're hearing a recreation of a Kiss concert?
Yeah, so I was excited for that. I had not seen them live yet, and then the record came out, and like I said, I was just blown away because I love the other records, and they became, as a 15-year-old in 1976, they were my favorite band. I made my own homemade T-shirts and wore them to school, and kids were like, "What is that?" And they had nobody knew who the hell I were at that point. But Alive came out, and obviously then everybody did know who they were. And just what an amazing record. I mean, the first three records I loved, and I loved the songs and everything, but this was like a whole game changer. Production was way better. The energy was insane. Like, this is what, as we all know in history, this is what, made the band really huge. I did, though, my first concert ever, I did get to see them on the Alive tour in February of 1976 at the LA Forum. And that was my first ever concert. And
with Montrose, right?
It was Montrose opening, and sadly with not Sammy Hagar singing, but Montrose opening, yeah. And it was, it was everything I wanted it to be and more. It's just a life-changing experience, and so great. And they had actually recorded Destroyer, and I was wondering if they're going to play anything from there. And I think they mentioned that it was coming out, fairly soon after the tour, but they just did the Kiss Alive set list, which of course was, just brilliant.
Now, that's your first concert, Brian. Did you have the presence of mind to bring a tape recorder in, or is that not for your first concert? You started.
No, that was it was a couple years later where I started recording everything. I was not quite there yet.
Wow.
Mark, when did you see them for the first time, and where does it coincide with the big release of Kiss Alive?
Well, I was a kid. Just getting into music right around that. But I mean, really getting into music. We had CKLW here in the Detroit area, which is a Canadian station from Windsor. And they played a healthy dose of Kiss and Alice Cooper and Aerosmith. And, I really started liking that kind of music so early on. And I was a big roller skater too, because that was just what you did back then, and the DJ would play stuff like Kiss. So anyway, so that was my kind of music. So as I got older, I wanted to start going to concerts, and the first one that I got to go see was the Dynasty tour in July of 1979, because I was 14 years old, and my parents let me go with my friend, and I remember being like super excited, but it wasn't, I could even tell at the time at 14, I'm like, okay, this is good. I liked it, but I wanted for lack of a better word, the evil or the mean Kiss. And I thought, even when I think back at that show, don't get me wrong, I very much enjoyed it. Cheap Trick in New England opened, but I didn't get those great feelings of, okay, this is what I want, until I saw the Creatures tour a couple years later. That's a whole nother discussion. But, seeing Kiss at Cobo on the Creatures tour gave me an Alive vibe, meaning they were raw and they were hungry again. But to answer your question, the Dynasty tour is the first time I saw them. However, by then, really by the time Alive and just shortly thereafter, Kiss was everything. Kiss was everything.
So for our audio audience, Brian reacted to me showing the Dynasty stage outfits, and it is very different than if seeing them. Even if you looked forward to when you felt like you got what you wanted on the Creatures of the Night tour. This, this is quite a different look from maybe what you were expecting in 1975.
Yeah, right. And that tour, by the way, I love Dynasty. I think it's a great record.
I do too.
You too.
That's
Absolutely.
a whole other discussion. But that tour, real quick, was the only thing I remember about it. Oh, I remember the show, obviously, but so many screaming little girls. It was hard to even hear the band.
So it was like a Don Jamieson show.
Exactly.
Allegedly. I feel like I should say that just so that we're all covered, Don.
Did that happen to you as well?
These are this is when Ace Frehley was a plumber.
Oh, yeah. Don sat in on my show. Who are these broadcasters? Where we went through the I was going to say infamous, but I'll go so far as to say the famous Tomorrow Show appearance where Tom Snyder and Ace Frehley sure hit it off. But,
that was great.
Nobody else had fun that night except for those two.
You have to go watch that on YouTube. It's brilliant.
It's amazing. Yeah, we've covered that on multiple shows. It's tough not to.
It never gets old.
Yeah. And
like the girls in my audience. Allegedly,
thank you. So Martin, when do you see Kiss for the first time?
Well, this is the part where I say I grew up in a small town, so I saw them for the first time in the 80s or 90s, but this actually happens to be one of my very early concerts because we were on a family vacation across Canada. So I grew up in Trail, BC, and so we piled into the green Dodge van, and we would camp one night and stay in a hotel, another night camp, hotel, whatever. But I saw them in Montreal, so we pulled into Montreal. So this would have been somebody corrected me once. It's either Love Gun tour or technically Alive 2 tour. I don't know, but Cheap Trick was backing up, so it was just Cheap Trick and Kiss, Montreal, 77. And I remember driving around and all of a sudden, my dad driving, of course, and all of a sudden we see Cheap Trick get out of a limo. Rob and Xander all in white, pretty weird. But yeah, Mom took us. So my mom, my brother, and me. Dad didn't go, and so Montreal, 1977.
That would be the Love Gun tour. That was the tour that they recorded Alive 2, which actually went to all the shows in LA where they recorded the record. And when Alive 2 came out, I was like, this is much different. There are songs that they did not play that were on that record, and the order was completely different. But that's again a whole nother story.
That'll be a part of the story that when we talk about Alive is just how alive it actually was. And Mr. Jamieson, when was the first time you got to see Kiss perform live?
Yeah, well, like Martin, it wasn't until the 80s, and the makeup was off already, so I never got to see them. The original, makeup band. I've seen them a ton of times since, but I want to clarify what I said before because I've talked.
Yeah, we know they were all 18. It's fine. We get it.
Wow, this is getting very Epstein. Kiss Destroyer was the first Kiss album I ever heard, and to me, the first Kiss album that had proper production. And so that's how I was used to listening to Kiss studio songs with a really kick-ass production. Then I went to the live albums after. Then when I went to the first Kiss album, Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill, that's when I panicked a little. And I said, oh my goodness, like these are not great versions of these songs. I'm so glad that, the versions, again, to me, that are the definitive versions of the songs are the live ones. And I think that was pretty typical with a bunch of bands in the 70s, talking about Cheap Trick. I Want You to Want Me, when you listen to the studio version, it's like a throwaway song. And then the live version basically gives them a 50-year career. So that was pretty typical at the time for the live version to be the definitive version.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example because I was, I don't know, maybe even in my 30s, the first time I heard the studio version, I'm like, oh no, that's a very different song. What were you going to say, Brian?
Oh, it's fascinating to, when you have conversations like this with, varying different generations about how they they judge records or they judge things. To me, I love those first 3 Kiss records. And while the production isn't amazing, it's raw and it's angry and it's different, and it was so much different from a lot of stuff coming out there. And at that point in time, very heavy too, which we didn't, especially Hotter Than Hell. The production was, they laugh at it, but it was that for 1975 or whatever that record, 74 when that record came out, that was heavy. It was really heavy. But I find this all the time. I do a bunch of stuff with Jericho's podcast, and we always talk Iron Maiden. We've done a few where there's 3 generations of fans. I'm the older one. Jericho's in the middle. Then we'd have Mr. Alderslade from the UK, and everybody has different points they came in, and everybody has different points about which records they like. And the younger guys like the secondary Bruce version. It's the same thing with Kiss. So it's always like that debate of like people coming in later and going, yeah, those first 3 records aren't really very good because of the production. I get it, but to me, it's the complete opposite. Just because I was around. What you say, the man who finally just returned from going to the bathroom, or whatever.
Oh no, I had a phone call.
Yeah.
So.
When you're on your phone and it gets a call. And by the
That'll
way,
do it,
if Jericho was here, he'd really want to talk a lot more about 80s Kiss.
Yes, yes.
Can we talk about Kiss Alive 3 is probably.
Oh boy. The question, Brian, was what?
Oh, I just said from your, do you love the first 3 records as well?
Yes.
Production wise and everything. Okay.
At this point, it is what it is. That's another thing. I didn't really start becoming a production snob till I got probably later in my teens. I just kind of always just expected, I don't know, that's what it sounded like. I didn't give it that sort of nerd sort of thought. I go back to like, when I first liked this kind of music, I knew that like Alice Cooper had da 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 da, and I knew that Deep Purple had diddly diddly, and I'm like,
I'm gonna interrupt you, Mark. I just got a text from Shep Gordon. You owe him $3 for
so
imagine what we owe Gene after this.
Yes, I was addicted to the riff. I that's what I liked. So. When you start hearing things like Cold Gin, I'm like, okay, that's it. That I didn't know how to talk about. Matter of fact, I know Martin, you've done this in many reviews. What do you compare it to at the time? I mean, it's tough. You don't, and it's funny too, because when you go back to that, by when I first got into Kiss in 74, 75, stuff like the MC5 and Stooges, especially in Detroit, that was a thing, but that wasn't my thing. I was listening to AM. But AM played BTO and Aerosmith and Deep Purple, you know what I mean? So you got the riffs, It wasn't until I got older when I started going, oh, what were the contemporaries? Speaking of contemporary, I did want to bring in something. Did you gentlemen happen to see the official Kiss Online discussion with Ken Sharp yesterday? Did you read any of that?
I sort of bookmarked it because I didn't get a chance, but I saw that was happening yesterday to coincide with the 50th anniversary.
Band that I hadn't gotten into until the last few years, sadly. But being an American, it's hard to get into them because they were never here. I didn't know that the cover, and this is Gene and Paul are part of this, the cover was semi-inspired by Status Quo.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
By the way, if you haven't yet, Claudio Bergaman, who's a artist, and he's done Judas Priest covers, a bunch of other stuff. He has this amazing YouTube show. It's all, you can go on YouTube and find them. But he interviewed the guy who created all the album covers of Kiss, every single one. And there's like a 45-minute to an hour-long discussion about every album cover, how it was created, what it was done. And he was the one doing all the work. He was the one picking up all of the he was the concepts and everything else. Like the band really didn't have much to do with it. It's a phenomenal watch and listen. So highly recommend it. And they talk about all the way from the first record all the way to like Beyond Unmasked. I think he was doing it. It's amazing. But they talk a lot about this, and you're exactly right about that. It was Status Quo. That it might have been the guy that I forget who it was that brought that up, but it wasn't anybody from Kiss.
Well, I guess the title itself is an homage to Slade had an album
Correct.
called Live, which I'm not going to lie, I only know that from the Wikipedia page. I don't want to pretend that I'm as well read as, say, Martin Popoff. Since I'm the one who can share visual representation, I did want to show off. The first time I saw Kiss was on the Hot in the Shade tour. And you can see 2 days apart, I saw Kiss and Aerosmith. Now, Mark in particular, I know the fact that this is Hot in the Shade and Pump eras is like, okay, that's not the peak, but this is when I was 14. So this is when I could see them. And, you could also compare to maybe later shows in recent decades. And, seeing them in 1990 was pretty amazing. Slaughter opened for Kiss, the Black Crowes opened for Aerosmith. So I didn't see them, sort of like Don was saying, I didn't see them in makeup until the reunion tour. And I will be perfectly honest. Musically, that was the worst time I saw the band, was when it was the 4 of them in the year 2000. And the fact that it's 2000 and not 96 probably
I was going to say that the early, I think I went to 35 or 40 or maybe even 50 of those reunion shows.
Nice.
And they were all amazing, but towards the end, not so good. And just real quick, Dennis Wolich was the director that did everything.
The Cole album cover that would be closest to that would be Pile Driver, where they're all in the jeans and doing the unison thing, right? But
Canadian band.
There's really no other album cover that looks like that, because Status Quo Live is after this one, and it kind of looks a bit like this. It's chaotic, at least. But I think that would be more like Status Quo doing the unison thing, the headbang.
That is exactly what they said. They weren't mimicking a picture; they were mimicking the stage move, which is kind of odd when you think about it, because Kiss was already doing the deuce move, if you want to call it that, as early as '73.
And like I said, Dennis talks about this whole thing about getting into these positions and how they did it, and it's always interesting because Ace's guitars. He never played the guitar like that because you can't really. It's like upside down sort of thing. But looks great.
It looks so cool. And in prepping for this, there's this photo that's like, I don't know, a few seconds before the actual album cover, and it's just slightly different poses, and that's our background for our visual audience. But obviously, this is the classic look.
Because you couldn't see the logo in the other one because the smoke was covering it. So.
Now, also, too, just for those who may not know, I think it's general knowledge, those pictures were all taken at the Michigan Palace, which is not the Palace of Auburn Hills, which a lot of people think, because the Palace of Auburn Hills, which is now demolished, but didn't exist in 1975.
I was going to say, that wasn't there yet.
Correct. So a lot of people do mistake because they're like, oh, there's that video of Kiss at the Palace. Yeah, different. Just because I get that. I especially being from Detroit, people will ask me about, well, God, that place looks small and the Palace is big. I'm like, because it's two different places. That's why. So
yeah, right, exactly. And I guess there are a few places that the recordings come from. And Don, one of them is in Wildwood, New Jersey. I had to look up where this venue was. Something tells me it hasn't been open in a while. It's like a Wildwoods Convention Center, and that was July 23rd, 1975. I'm going to just assume, and as basically our de facto governor of New Jersey, that seems to be a place that they probably weren't having shows much beyond 75.
Yeah, I don't know the history, but Jersey is definitely a convention hall state. Right. A lot of my early shows were seen at the Asbury Park Convention Center, and there was a whole bunch of different convention centers around the state. So the Asbury Park one is actually still around.
Yeah. I saw a bunch of shows there in the 90s. It's a well-loved venue. Is that a nice way to describe Convention Hall, Don?
Sure, why not?
That's a nice way to put it. Again, our visual audience is seeing the track listing from all 4 sides, 16 songs on Kiss Alive, and it does kind of lead us to talking a little bit about the production. You guys were talking about studio.
Well, hold on, let's talk about the picture. That is Cobo Hall.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Cobo Hall, where most of it was recorded.
Let me tell you, as a lifelong Detroiter, no concert venue sounds as good. I mean, they no longer use it. It's it's still there, but they use it for like auto shows and shit now. But that venue, I saw everyone from Nugent, Aerosmith, all the way on down, Jay Giles. That place was, because it was horseshoe. The seats didn't go behind the stage. It was built really for sound. And there's no doubt why, Jay Giles recorded part in there. Aerosmith, one of the songs from my bootleg is from Kobo. Kobo just sounded fucking amazing. It was loud and clear. That was a great place to see live music. Just wanted to.
That's one of the reasons why they recorded it there, because it was so good and the acoustics were so good. So that was definitely one of the reasons. I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with Eddie Kramer. We never worked with him at Metal Blade, but he would come up to the office, and what a great guy. Like, he literally would sit in my office and I just grill him for hours about Kiss, and he answered all the questions, and he told a bunch of stories and things. So what I remember from talking to him about this record, because obviously there's everybody, I think all the different Kiss books have different talking differently about how what's live, what's not live. It's pretty much most of the drums are live, and there's definitely quite a bit of the other parts and other instruments and vocals that are live. But yeah, it's a very heavily doctored up record, so to speak, where they did re-record a lot of it, and but there's bits and pieces that are live, and even the crowd is like, I think 2 or 3 different shows mixed together.
It is a tape loop.
Tape loop. So I mean, look, whatever people say about the production or whether it's live or not live, it's a fucking incredible record, and that you can't take that away from it. And honestly, none of those records in the 70s were all just a recorded live thing. So
yeah, I mean, this album does sound really good. I mean, I just want to say a little bit about the previous productions and versions. I mean, I think the first album sounds kind of similar to this album, and Hotter Than Hell's got the eccentricity, but it's still got that turgid, bleeding between all the instruments thing. It's really only Dressed to Kill that really stands out, because that's where you start getting that you're starting to hear that little bit of acoustic guitar massaged in and stuff, and that you don't get on a live at all. But yeah, I think I always thought that those earlier albums, especially, the first two are as heavy sounding performance wise, and how high up into the mix the guitars are, and I love the turgid quality of Hotter Than Hell as well. But I suppose that the best thing about this is it definitely has an increased wildness to it, and it is a whole bunch of heavy songs put in a row. I did a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff episode where I looked at the what are the heaviest albums of the 70s if you include live albums. And I was surprised going through this, thinking this is as heavy as most of the live records that you got at the time. It's pretty much as heavy as the Ted Nugent album, as the Aerosmith album. It's probably heavier than the Blue Oyster Cult album. The only album that won the entire thing by a long shot was Judas Priest Unleashed in the East, which I think if you include live albums, it is the heaviest album of the 70s period, live and studio included. And one other point I wanted to make, I always found it interesting about this whole thing about what do you compare Kiss to? Because at the time, you get a really pretty bare bones and amateurish Aerosmith album in 73. You get an absolutely gold standard heavy metal album that I call the first heavy metal album, American heavy metal album of all time, the Montrose album in 73. Deep Purple's on its way out. Uriah Heep is starting to not be heavy anymore. They've gone past their golden period. Your Demons and Wizards, Magician's Birthday, Sweet Freedom in 73. So after that, they're on their way out. America's just kind of getting into the thing with their post-British blues boom hangover with Mountain and Cactus, and Ted Nugent is still Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes in 73 on Discreet, Tooth, Fang, and Claw 74. So there isn't much to compare it to. I always felt that it's got that little bit of the very, very heaviest things that Slade would do or BTO would do, but pretty much nothing else. It did feel, I remember as a kid, it did feel like it was moving away. There isn't a lot of blues in Kiss. So it was moving away from that in a modern sense. So it felt like a fresh new band, and it was a debut album in '74. So it was a new band. It was a baby band. But I thought that the Montrose album and Kiss were the first bands that were properly moving away from the blues, getting rid of the blues the same way Sabbath did and Deep Purple did already long time ago, and Uriah Heep did. But for North America, this is the first time you're getting that, because Aerosmith is going to keep the blues. Aerosmith it's still going to be there. And Aerosmith very quickly is going to be a much better band than Kiss, I think, as you move through certainly Toys in the Attic and Rocks. I think they're leaps ahead of Kiss by that point. But they aren't ahead. Well, they aren't.
No, I gotta agree with Martin.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, here,
Rock that's pretty impressive stuff. I mean,
look,
yeah.
those records are brilliant, both brilliant. And here's where, because I've had this argument many times, and I love both bands, but musically, Aerosmith are better players when they were actually playing on the records, which they weren't all playing on all those records either. But the thing about Kiss and what you were talking about and the sound of it, especially this record, this is why for me and a lot of other people are metal fans and stuff. Kiss was an original metal band, because you're right about them moving away from the blues. It became more riff oriented and more song oriented. But what you have to remember at Kiss is what they were doing. They were playing Gibson Les Pauls through Marshall amps, and that is the heavy metal sound. That's or Flying V. Gibson guitars through Marshall amps and probably 100-watt heads more than likely. That's the core sound of metal, period. And that's what Kiss was doing, and they're doing it in the mid '70s at a pretty high level. So that's why I think so many people who became big metalheads or big metal bands all were so influenced by Kiss. But are they the best musicians in the world? No. Is Aerosmith better musicians and better songwriters? Probably. But I argue with Kiss, just such an amazing band, and everything worked about that band. And those two bands were rivals back in the '70s.
Mm-hmm.
You either liked Aerosmith or you like Kiss. You rarely liked them both. I did like them both.
Yep, same.
I didn't just I loved them both. It depended on which day of the week you asked me. It was my favorite band.
What were you going to say, Don?
Well, I was just say Mark made a good point about the photos. I mean, as much as we're discussing the music on the album, which I agree with Martin. I mean, this is such a heavy album. And by the way, I'm also going to look up the word turgid after we wrap up here. But it's a dark album, which I love. But it's when you are 12 years old. It's the front cover, and Mark giving us great history on that, which in this tiny little place. But to me, when you look at that cover, they're playing in front of 1 million people. And when you flip the album over and you see the back cover, that's who they're playing to. And that looks like there's 1 million. When you're 12, it looks like there's 1 million people there. Cobo Hall, what's about 12,000, right? It just makes the visual of it just makes everything seem so big. And that's what was always appealing about Kiss, was they were over the top, breathing the fire, the blood, and all that stuff. So it's, for me, the visual of the front cover, the back cover, and let's not forget the little notes that were inside.
Yeah.
That at the time, if my mother had read these notes, she would have immediately threw this in the garbage, because they are way more sexual than I remembered back when I was a kid. I was rereading them today, which is one of the things I love about doing this. Is not that I needed to go back and revisit this, but I always do, and I find something new again. And those, I mean, it's the 3 of the 4 guys are basically saying, every night we go out on stage and we fuck you. It's all sexual innuendo, and I guess when you're 12 you don't really pick up on that, but that's all part of the packaging. And of course the marketing of the 3 early albums just so you didn't forget, or
Yeah.
right there, the
Yeah.
Buy more, buy more.
with the
Yeah.
disc.
It's
So
the
it
same.
works.
It's the same era that you bought a Star Wars figure and then like, oh, look on the back. Look, here's everybody else. You don't have a Chewbacca. You have to get one. It's like, well, you don't have Hotter Than Hell, so you
Yeah.
should get that. By the way, what you're talking about, the notes, the way that they wrote, basically saying that they were going to fuck you every night. I don't know if you know this, Don, but that's why they had the Kiss condom and the Kiss casket, because they could get you coming and going. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but
Yeah. Yeah.
just something that it made me realize, like, obviously I should have invited Craig Gass for this, but having him read
Gene
the
has that
Gene
trademarked.
having him read the Gene letter is actually a missed opportunity, so that's bad on my part.
I got to tell my story again of hearing this album for the first time, because
Please do.
I'm sure you guys have heard this a million times, but I got to say, because maybe someone hasn't heard it. But so we were putting on a dance in my house, my parents' house basement, right, at the time, and my buddy Forrest Toop, who was the my friend who was totally into music like I was, we were out scrounging around at the town dump, right? And we walk in, we go up the big sandy road, and right before you get to the dump is this pristine box sitting on the ground, and we open it up, and it's got April Wine 1974 tour posters. The one that is the really evil looking black and purple one, the front cover of the April Wine live album, right? So it's a big tour poster that playing the Cominco Arena in Trail. Big box of them. The guy obviously didn't put them all up. There must have been a couple hundred in there. So we thought this will be perfect for the dance, right? So we went into the basement and we plastered these things ceiling to floor all the way around the big rec room. So the whole place was black and purple, right? And so we're putting on this dance. It's right after school. And one of our buddies, Bobby Davidson, he had a dentist appointment downtown, so we knew he was coming in late. There you go. So it was a couple hundred of those, but a tour poster, right? And I still got one of them. But so we're having this dance, and we've got the girls there and everything, and we're playing Elton John and all this stuff, and playing the occasional Saturday night's all right for fighting. Elton John's heavy metal song, great.
Well, because there were girls there, we understand.
It's like
we know.
in this Elton John song, it's at least heavy or whatever, right? So all of a sudden, Bobby bursts through the door, and he's holding up a copy of this, and it's like, oh my God, he went to the store. It was here. And we all dogpiled on top of him. And I remember all of us like in this big Fat Albert, Bill Cosby kids show.
Careful.
Pile of kids. Yeah. On top
Buck
of them.
was the
And we're ripping the cellophane off and everything, and we tear the album open, and it's everything comes off the stereo, and this goes on the stereo, and it just turned into a listening party for this new album, and we're playing the album, and then we look up, and all the girls have left. They've all they didn't say anything to us, and it's just like, oh, the room's empty. What happened?
that still happens today.
yeah, right. And so that was our first hearing it. Bobby Davidson was the first guy to have it, and came in late, and just killed this dance we were having. And it was roughly 5 PM as it turns into a listening party.
What Don was talking about, just sort of the optics of, yes, the front cover, but then you see that that arena, and you're just like, God, I wish I was there, because you see these 16 songs. I'm like, oh, just imagine. And yes, obviously it's recreated for a live album, but the idea of like, imagine being in that venue for these 16 songs in this order, it's amazing. And they used to try to pretend that it wasn't as re-recorded as it was, and as the years went on, they were a lot more honest about it. But I don't know, Brian, I think it had to sound perfect. You know what I mean? You had to make it better.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously I had the record, and I was like I mentioned earlier, the first concert I went to was Kiss, and that was on the Alive tour, so they played the exact set that is on the record, exactly in the order and everything that they do it. And again, I was a 15-year-old kid, but I just thought it was amazing. I thought it was every bit as good as the record was, but you could see them, and you could see the fire, and Gene spitting blood. I mean, that again, and in 76, that was dangerous. Like, this band was dangerous. Like Alice Cooper is dangerous, and these guys were dangerous. Like parents didn't want their kids going to see this band with the face paint and the fire and all this crazy stuff. So they were doing just and again, that early days where production wasn't a big thing. Like most bands just go up and just play in their jeans and t-shirts. So they had a whole production, and it was pretty amazing. And I think back to that show, and I've seen like I think it's 6,000 concerts now or some stupid number. But I go back to that one. I go, that one was so far ahead of its time on so many different levels. It was just incredible. And to me, it sounded exactly like the record.
Well, and I like what Don said. Dangerous is a perfect description of the show. And Don, calling this album dark. Yeah, it's true. Somehow it comes out dark. And I'm looking at it, and it's like side 3 is like a really dark. Watching you 100,000 Years, Black Diamond all in a row, like that's a dark side. And even Rock Bottom's heavy. Cold Gin, I remember, that felt really transgressive as a kid, being all about drinking, right? To us, Cold Gin sounded like heroin at the time, right? Talking about Cold Gin, right? But yeah, it's definitely a heavy album. You've got Parasite. She is a very heavy song, of course. Got to Choose is super heavy. Deuce is heavy. So it's a real stomping. They're a chordal band, right? It's almost like that's why I think like no band really sounded like this except really heavy BTO, because they're kind of like lethargic the way they make the moves. It's like everything's slow and sluggish and very chordal, not very particularly riffy, not a lot of notes. It's just a lot of chords moving around, and they're not very bluesy chords too.
No, and they're great riffs. Ultimately metal comes down to riffs, and why is Metallica great? Because James Hetfield keeps writing amazing riffs, and they're really great riffs. But the brilliance of Gene Simmons, he's so great on Cold Gin, singing a song about getting drunk and drinking gin from a man who's never had a sip of alcohol his entire life.
Well, I wanted to go back to something you said, because I happen to just have this here in my I'm a big bootleg guy, and this show here in particular, and it's on the internet, and you can.
Oh yeah, I got that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, well, if you listen to this, this is the actual tape.
So for our audio audience, it's Tulsa. What is that? June of '75.
Yeah. This I bought from J.R. Smalling. It's the original cassette from the board.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I had
the intros Kiss Alive.
So yes, correct. Now, if you listen again, it's on YouTube. And keep in mind, it's just a fucking board tape. That sounds a lot like Kiss Alive. I mean, my point is the tones and how the drums sounded during the. So I've often said, because somebody who's been able to collect these sorts of things, yes, they redid it in the studio, but damned if it doesn't sound like they sounded live.
Yeah, you're 100% right, because I've got probably 10 concerts, and about 5 or 6 of them are soundboard from that 75 tour. And you're 100% right. I mean, if you A/B it, it's not a whole lot of difference between those tapes off the board and what a live.
And I'm going to give you a little precursor. When these box sets come out, that's all I can say.
Awesome.
That's what we like to hear.
The other thing was this was the last grasp at breaking Kiss. So whatever it took to make this sound spectacular is what they had to do. And, we all feel the same way about it, which is whatever the percentage of it that was re-recorded, doesn't matter. It's a great document of the band. You can go down YouTube rabbit holes for hours, and I have, and watched shows from around that time, and they were just so young and hungry and mean and lean and vicious. But one of my favorite things about this record is, could you imagine in the last 40 years plus that if Kiss played Rock and Roll All Night and then Let Me Go Rock and Roll after that?
They did that. They did that a lot in the 70s. A lot of those tours, even after Alive, they would do that for, I don't know why, but
they started
like
shortening.
Rock and Roll All Night was not what it became. It wasn't what it became then. That they actually had to follow with another song.
Yeah, you're right. But even after that, because I'm pretty sure, like on 77, 78, they did a lot of shows where they ended with Let Me Go Rock and Roll after Rock and Roll All Night still.
Oh, let me no, not at
I was
all.
going
Let
to
me
say, I
go.
feel like Mark has the answer. Go ahead.
No, let me go rock and roll. They and a lot of especially after Destroyer, after that period, they edited it down live.
Yes.
They didn't start doing the alive version because if you're a big Aerosmith head too, it's like when you see Same Old Song and Dance live from because I've got a ton of their bootlegs too because I love them so much. But that's always got that extended bass jam on it. And this was the same thing with Kiss. Here's a song on the album that's 4 minutes long, but on the live album it's 7 minutes long or whatever it is. And I love like finding that how come they didn't record it like that in the studio, Because they obviously had it rehearsed that way because they were playing it back then with the longer jam at the end. But that's another thing. Kiss isn't a jam band.
No.
That's the jammiest they get, and it fucking works. That's one of my favorite songs on Kiss Alive. My favorite album, and that's one of my favorite songs. That's how much I love. And by the way, if you've never noticed, you guys, I'm sure you guys probably do, but for our audience, Let Me Go Rock and Roll has a unique distinction on Kiss Alive that it's the only song, I believe, where you can tell where it was recorded. Do you guys know the answer to that?
No, I don't know the answer to that.
Some deep trivia here.
Yeah.
By the way, before you answer that real quickly, I wanted to mention, why they didn't do the long version on there is because of time. And you only can put so much amount of music on a side of a record. So I think if they would have done the long version of that on Kiss Alive, it wouldn't have fit. So that's probably why they edited it, or did the shorter version.
But what's the location for where it was recorded? Do they say something in the song that
he says, "Come on, Quad City."
Ah.
Oh, I
Really?
never picked that up.
So is that Iowa or where?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Oh wow. No, I don't know how many times I've listened to that, but now I'm going to hear it every time, Mark.
Yeah. Gene belts out, "Come on, Quad City," and that's.
I think part of the problem is you can't understand what they say some of the time. 'Cause I remember hearing it though. I never figured that out.
I mean, we definitely need to address a big part of Alive, and of course, pretty much all live recordings, and it's Paul's stage banter. And this one is fine. You could play it in the room with your kids. Some of the '80s stage banter got a little rough, a little ribald. That's another one of those words that Don can look up. But
I'm looking up transgressive, which I thought was a guy named Gressive
who used to hang around with Jim Norton. Yeah, no, I know what you're getting at. Yeah. So the idea as to where it is, I think they do a pretty good job because even at the very beginning, they don't even say what city, and that's
on purpose.
No, exactly, and it makes us. I can only imagine, those of you listening to it in the '70s, having not seen them, and you hear the big explosions, and you look at the pictures, and you're just imagining what it all is. I mean, because they hadn't had live performances like Don Kirshner's rock concerts like years after this, right? Had they been seen live on TV, Mark, at this point where
yes.
It was okay. Yes. So there was some idea of what it would be like.
Well, the In Concert was from from the debut album, and they did was it ABCs, and they're different, and that's the one where they do Deuce and Black Dime, where Peter trashes his kit.
Oh, okay.
At the end, so so those two had already been, plus they were on
Paul Lynde?
Mike Douglas.
Oh yeah,
Paul Lynde was not till Paul Lynde's. It's funny. I mentioned earlier that I've been playing hockey my whole life. You can only imagine a young Mark. I'll never forget when Paul Lynde was on. I had hockey practice that night, and I begged my parents, begged them to let me stay home. And they're like, "No, you are going to hockey practice." And Kiss was everything in my life, And I remember going to the next day to school and everyone talking about it. And I'm like, I did not see that until the bootleg videos in like the early 80s. So obviously saw the pictures of it and all of that, but I never saw that in real time because I was at hockey practice and I was like devastated. So
Well, yeah, and obviously, we're all aware, and I think the majority of our audience is, but just for anybody that's a little bit younger, the idea of something was on TV and you didn't watch it, well, then you didn't see it. That was it.
it aired one time.
Yeah. And now, I could show it on my phone, but that's yeah. So I guess a lot of it is just trying to use your imagination, which probably just adds to the magic, the mystery, and the darkness of what Don was talking about earlier. And I think that it's interesting what you were saying, Mark, is that just an actual soundboard recording sounds an awful lot like this, and it's mostly a little tweaks, and the
It's
explosion
right from the board. That tape is right from the board.
Yeah.
It sounds just like Kiss Alive.
Right. And the explosions didn't sound right. So it's like, okay, well, we'll recreate that. But it's like we've been saying for most of the last hour, none of that really matters because this is such a great recording. Although, Mark, I do know that you do a show with someone who prefers Kiss Alive too. Isn't that correct?
Well, you look at the time. It's funny because today I had a long drive. I'm a contractor. I had to go well past Port Huron to go look at, so it's about an hour north of me. So it's funny. I listened to Kiss Alive on the way there. I listened to Kiss Alive 2 on the way back. And I tell you, I love Kiss Alive 2. I do.
Sure.
I just don't see how people can say they're equals. I night and day for me.
You're so right. I mean, and again, from someone who went to all the shows they recorded, and I think I can't remember, it's 4 or 5 songs they never played. So those songs are just clearly done in the studio as live. And I'm not talking about the studio song.
Or at sound check, like I Stole Your Love.
Something, yeah, it was something. It was just so weird. And the set
Tomorrow and Tonight was done at sound check.
Yeah, and also just the sequence was completely different. Like it was nothing at all like the show was. So it was so weird.
Hard Luck Woman was done at sound check.
So to me, when I got it, I was like, because I was prepared to hear the show that I went to, and I was like, oh wow, this is completely not what I went to, and sequence is off. And I mean, I still love it. It's still a great record. But just I know too much, basically.
Yeah, and the way that I always looked at those, because I'm referring to the box of Kiss tapes that had both of them in there, and like it's in every way it's a sequel. It's like, well, here's a bunch of Kiss songs that you now know looking backwards that weren't out yet. So it's like it's just more, and I think that. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I just looking at that because they began with "I Stole Your Love." That was the first song. So I wonder whose decision it was to make that the first song on side 2 and not the first song on side 1. I guess they're going to Rock City because that was the big hit. It's just kind of like I'm curious to how that happened because that's the one thing that really confused me. Is the set list completely different from the song from the one they actually played.
Well, you couldn't open side 2 with Beth.
No, that's a great point.
Detroit Rock City.
Yeah, one of the things I always thought was puzzling, and I just instinctively knew this as a kid. I remember listening to God of Thunder going, that's not even really a drum solo. I mean, when you compare it to Kiss Alive, part of, at least in my world, the drum solo on 100,000 Years is one of my favorite drum solos ever. Is it the most technical? No, but it's almost like a song within a song. And I love the way, they worked Paul's vote, his call and response and his interaction with the crowd. It made you feel like you were there. And, Peter's solo on God of Thunder on Alive 2, it's so rinky dink, and it's like a hurry up and get this thing over. It's funny. I was in my buddy's got a little studio thing, and you can do all this kind of stuff at home. But on my version that I use on my iPod, because I'm old and I still use one, I cut the solo out, and because if you do the count, that dun dun, in time, you can start the music right back up, because I can't stand the solo because you can tell it's so heavily edited and there's nothing to it. It's just him doing a long snare roll and then hitting his bass drum like 8 times. I'm like,
it's terrible. But to your point about the solo on 100,000 Years, so recently Charlie Benante, who I think is one of the best drummers ever.
Oh yeah, incredible.
Phenomenal drummer, great guy as well. But he posted something where Peter Criss came to the New Jersey Pantera show, and so Charlie did a big long post about how influential Peter was, and Charlie said that one of his favorite solos ever of all time is the solo in 100,000 Years that Peter Criss did.
Me too.
Neat. Alive 2, I mean, I really appreciate, number one, I think they capture the spirit in the production on Alive 2 that they had on Alive 1. I definitely don't appreciate having no exclamation mark in Alive. That was ridiculous.
That's a great point. Well, wait. Where do you put the exclamation part?
There's
I
two.
put it after Alive or after the 2?
Alive.
If you put it after the 2, then it looks like Alive 3, and then that's a different conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. But also, I think I appreciate getting the more wilder, more chaotic, more incestuous sounds to everything bleeding, guitars into drums and all that, the echo. I think I appreciate these versions more over the Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun versions, not so much the Destroyer versions, than I do of the songs on Alive 1 over the first 3 albums. Like I say, except for Dressed to Kill. So I think you get the same sort of you check that box of getting the wilder versions of these songs on Alive 2, which is good. So it matches in that. And then, of course, we get the messiness of the complete studio side on there. So,
by the way, I love Martin quoting the movie Slapshot. Thank you for that.
What were you going to say, Don?
Captured the spirit of it.
I was going to say, on a turgidity scale, what would you give Kiss Alive 1 and Kiss Alive 2?
They're both turgid, right? I would rank Hotter Than Hell the most turgid, then Kiss Alive, then Kiss Alive 2.
There you go.
Earlier when we were talking about, not ending with Rock and Roll All Night, Mark, I'm going to assume that you were on the Kiss cruise the year that they did Rock and Roll Night into I from the Elder, which is
I almost started crying. I was I was there, and when they did it, I remember I was like, Rock and Roll Night was ending, and I'm like, okay, and then the drum roll, and I'm like, no way. No fucking way. This is insane. Look, as a Kiss nerd, that was Kiss nerd nirvana. I mean, it was just so cool. And I tell you what, too, the very first Kiss cruise, they did Getaway.
Awesome. Great song.
Yeah. Oh my God. And
love it.
It's like, why didn't you do this? I don't know, sneak this. I understand. Look, I understand, because especially towards the end, Kiss, it's a very scripted show, meaning the song has lights in it. This one is, unlike some, but man, I tell you what, I miss that sort of spontaneity in rock shows. Matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, not even about 10 days, whatever, a couple weeks, I saw Nugent, and Ted played Where Have You Been All My Life? And I'm like, I about fucking fell out of my chair. I'm like, that's off the first record. I'm like, I thought that was long forgotten. I think the last time he did it was 76. My point in all this is, like, I like when I go see my legacy acts and they go, here's one for you guys. We're gonna play the hits, but we remember you saving your lunch money so you could come see us in 79. This one's for you.
Yeah. Did you go to any of the Aerosmith Vegas residency shows?
No, I'm so lucky. I ended up getting a lot of work, so I didn't go, and then the bastards canceled. Yeah. Well, I tell you, here's how much of an Aerosmith fan is I am. I flew down to Tampa to see the opening show, the opening Joe Perry Project show. Nice. And yeah, because they weren't coming to Detroit. Matter of fact, I think I called Martin. You and I talked because I asked you about. Because I was thinking about going to Toronto, but I'm like, fucking go to Toronto, take the train, or fly down and, sit by the beach for a week. So I did that instead. But let me tell you, Joe did a great job. And, they did fucking Bright Light Fright and, just shit that you're like, Yeah, that's what I came down here for. I didn't come down here to
Yeah,
hear the fucking hits,
and that's what they were doing, because I went to 8 of those shows, and the first 6 of them, so there's the first year or so, it was like pretty much 85% all 70s stuff, and
Nice.
other like others. I mean, they did a whole big Seasons of Wither production thing, and that's one of my favorite songs ever. And but they would do that. They pull out all these old 70s songs that they didn't normally play, and they actually didn't play Rats in the Cellar that much, which kind of bothered me because I love that. And they did finally play it once, and it was an elongated version. It was great, but it's cool that they do that. But there are certain bands like Kiss and other bands who don't change the set list, and their excuse is that, like you just said, it's a show where everything has to happen at a certain time, and the lighting and everything, and if you do introduce something new, it'll screw it up. But my argument with that is, well, fucking Metallica, the biggest band in the world, they have a very choreographed show and everything, and they play different stuff all the time, and
Exactly.
let the lighting guy figure it out.
Yeah, you have to care, though. See, that's the whole thing. You have to care.
and they have to plan it out. And I don't know, Don, you can probably relate. I remember seeing Aerosmith in, I think, 2012 at the Forum here in LA, and they start doing Lord of the Thighs, and of course I'm losing my mind, and everybody's like, all right, looks like it's time to go get another Tall Boy, and people just start pouring out. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I feel like that Don Jamieson is kind of that moment. You probably have that happen in some shows now and then.
Oh, well, when they played Toys in the Attic in its entirety, people were flooding to the beer stands during Uncle Salty, and unless it was Walk This Way or Sweet Emotion, they were. And these are people who were paying $200-$300, a ticket. Which this is what, 15 years ago now that they did this. That's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money anyway. But to not sit there and take in No More, and just all these great. I know they're not the hits. Sorry.
Look, at Pine Knob, they did Kings and Queens, and I was almost in tears. And there go the beer lines. I'm like, and then they do Amazing, and everyone's running back. I'm like, oh my God,
we got to be back in our seats in time for Pink.
Yeah. And that was the sad thing about the last run of the dates, is I guess they had, because they were, like I said, they would play Uncle Salty, and they would play Same Old Song and Dance, and they would play Sick as a Dog and all that stuff. And I was out of my mind, because that's the Aerosmith stuff that I love. And I think somebody eventually got to them, because towards the end it became about half of the early stuff and then half of all the Pink and all other stuff. It's like, it was
I don't know.
kind of a bummer, but the first part of it was incredible. But you're right, there's some songs where, like Uncle Salty, I think they did play once, and that was one of the, well, where did everybody go? Oh, they're all in Lighthouse.
Brian, I don't know if you were in Vegas when Cheap Trick did. I don't know if it was at the Strat. They did like 4 nights. They did a 70s night, an 80s night. And I mean, I whatever it would have cost if Aerosmith had done that, I'm like, because I know, I'm sorry, Mark, I like some of the 80s songs, not so many of the 90s songs.
Oh boy.
But I would have liked to have got, I wouldn't have needed to go to the 2000s night, but just a few from the 80s. But and I'm surprised Cheap Trick. I guess, I don't know. Maybe things like that are hard to bill, when it's like, we're going to do 4 albums, 1 each night. You have to really have people in a city that are like, yeah, I want to see that band 4 times. And that would be us, but not everybody.
It's hard to do too. I went to see last night one of my favorite bands, and some of the nicest people on the planet, Coheed and Cambria. And they're a very progressive band, and their stuff is very intricate. And they would do. I was talking to Claudio, the singer, because he's doing all these intricate guitar parts and singing these difficult melody lines, and they would do these things called Never Ender, where they would do like the first 4 albums back to back, one night, and they wouldn't do it they'd pick like 10 cities or whatever. But that's so hard to do, and I just don't know that some of these bands can it's not easy to play that many songs.
I saw Cheap Trick do that 4 nights in a row. They played the first 4 records, and that was at a place here in Detroit called, I think it was St. Andrews. They did it, and I went every night, and it was great. As they did like the whole first record, then they did like B-sides and stuff after that, and then they played a couple of the hits just for the fuck of it. But those were 4 of my favorite shows ever. Just to see a band like Cheap Trick playing those great early records, and the fact that they took time to go over. I always thought if Kiss did something like that, trying to tie this back in because this is all about Kiss.
That's true.
That would be incredible. But I'll be honest. I hate to say this, they're my favorite band of all time. But I just don't think they want to put in that kind of effort, and especially now that they're older.
They're pretty much done now. Did they ever do a full album at a concert? I don't remember if they did.
No. Matter of fact, that was the thing with the cruises. And that was another thing that bothered me. They'd announced they're going to do some stuff. I'll never forget they did Larger Than Life. And Gene had the cadence of the vocals. What you can tell he didn't rehearse it. He knew, and he's looking over at Tommy to what chord are we playing? And I'm like, dude, I love you. You fucking take time to learn it. It was really bothering because don't blowing smoke up my skirt going, hey, we're going to do 5 songs we've never played before. Okay, cool. Well, here's an idea. Fucking rehearse them. Just don't play them. I mean, play them half-ass. I mean, again, this stuff's on YouTube. Go look. It's really depressing when you're waiting for
line these days, especially is because Brian and I went together to one of the residency shows for Aerosmith, and he and I got 1 drink apiece before we went in, and it was $56. So you really gotta hate a song and go back out and spend $56 on 2 drinks.
Yeah, that's a true story.
But the ice was free, Don.
Yeah.
The more I talk to Aerosmith fans and we do video shows and stuff, I feel like there's 2 types of Aerosmith fans in the world. The ones that say yes to Permanent Vacation and Pump, and the ones who don't. That's basically
I know one person on this screen who's a no to both of those, but that really helped me find the band. But
I
always thought Dude Looks Like a Lady was a stupid song. I'm not gonna lie.
I stopped. Don't remember. I like some of Permanent Vacation. Sure. The title track's awesome.
It's great. Yeah. I agree.
Pump is where they kind of lost me. And after Pump though. I got to tell you, Martin, just recently,
an improvement over Permanent Vacation, and then it stops. I mean, I feel like if you're a super incredible, dedicated, oh my God, I love Aerosmith fan, you go up to Pump, and then it's all over. But I've never heard anybody.
Martin, I recently revisited the one you did with Pete, where you had to pick out the because I'm like, what am I missing? Because I can't even get through these fucking albums. And for the most part, you guys picked out some of the songs that are at least acceptable. Although I got to tell you, both of you guys have, in my opinion, I always just found "Eat the Rich" to be I can't even sit through that song. I just don't like it.
When Don had his show on Compound Media, I used to do a segment where I would point out my least favorite song from bands. And when the guitar starts on "Eat the Rich," it's a fine song, but I'm like, yeah, but you got to focus on the rap at the beginning. And it's easy to forget that Steven's rapping at the beginning of "Eat the Rich." And by the way, that starts the album. And Martin, you're talking about there's different levels of Aerosmith fans. I think that there's probably only a handful of Aerosmith fans that can tell you the difference from a few notes of the 3 Alicia Silverstone songs. I see them and I'm like, is this crying or is this crazy? I don't know. And sometimes they finish and I'm like, wait, which one did I just hear? But
I will say this. I say this about all my favorite legacy artists. Of all of them, Cheap Trick, Kiss, Van Halen, Alice Cooper. I mean, there's a good list. Deep Purple. All those bands have released at least one really good record post their 70s, heyday, except for one. I don't think Aerosmith has music, for the new, whatever that's horrible.
Music from Another Dimension. Yeah.
Oh my God, is that fucking? I must have tried.
Well, there's another one.
Def Leppard.
Well,
yeah, I would agree with that. I don't like anything after High and Dry. Actually,
also Alice Cooper.
I was actually literally about to ask Mark.
Raise your fist and yell the second.
Hold on, Eyes of Alice Cooper is as good as anything.
I like Dirty Diamonds a lot.
It literally didn't get out of my mouth fast enough.
Boys,
I'm gonna
behave
throw up.
yourselves.
I'm not going to talk about Dirty Diamonds, but the Eyes of Alice Cooper, I thought actually had great songs.
Incredible album. I
Yeah.
love that album start to finish.
But
gonna
Brian
throw
seems
up.
to disagree. But
I'm gonna throw up. Those
but I
records
do
are
Oh,
agree
you're
about Raise
kidding.
Your
You
Fist
don't
and
like
Yell.
Eyes? Eyes to
God,
me
no.
is like incredible. I love that. record.
and no one cares about those records. They sold
No,
nothing.
well that.
Oh, yeah,
that
but I don't care that people like them. I like them.
Yeah,
I
I don't like him. I love Alice Cooper. I've always been a huge Alice Cooper fan. But basically the last good record he did was probably Welcome to My Nightmare. I do like side 2 of Raise Your Fist and Yell. That's super
Whoa.
heavy with chop 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 and everything. But
Chop
other
Chop,
than that,
look, it's great. Roses on White Lace, but
amazing.
Roses.
Don and I are from the inside guys. So
Great album. Great
we
album.
reissued from the inside, so I do
remember.
love that record.
I called
Passion,
into Eddie Trunk's show and said thank you for re-releasing that. I said it right to you, Brian.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a good record, but
I did an episode of like what is the only band that sounds like classic Alice Cooper, and I think this is true. Blue Oyster Cult,
Yeah.
early
I can
Blue
agree
Oyster
with
Cult
that.
and
Sure.
early Alice Cooper are the only 2 bands that sound like that. Right?
Well, I do feel like we've gotten so far away from talking about Kiss that it must be time to kind of wind down with a final thought. One of the things that I had seen this when it happened, and it was more that I was reminded of it in preparing for this show, is that the guys from the back cover, I actually don't know. I assume that's one of their sons in the middle, but those guys.
That's Fran.
Oh, that's Fran. So that's okay. So that's what that. See, I should have just said, Mark, why don't you explain this picture? These were the guys from that picture recreating it with the original sign. Do I at least have that part right, Mark?
Yeah, I whatever. I got my picture taken with that.
I would too.
It was weird. There's also I'm also looking on a phone. The picture's this big. That's what I think, because I'm familiar with the picture. I believe that's the picture of them with Fran.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And
I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Anyways, in the local Detroit paper, 2 guys made one of those, and they weren't the real guys, and they did a whole news story on them, which was really kind of silly.
Yeah.
It's like the remember the fake Peter Criss who was on the Phil Donahue show?
Who can forget that? Who can forget?
Don't get Dango Jones started on that. I always thought the blonde on the back that was a girl and not a dude.
Oh no. Well, I hope you didn't spend too much time thinking that.
No,
graphic.
It was only a passing glance.
It reminds me of a joke in Don's act about the first Poison album. So, but no, yes, you glance at that. That does look like a girl.
He would do in a pinch.
Thank you for that. But anyway, yes. So 50 years, and Kiss are not missing the opportunity. There were some posts online, and it's I've bought multiple reissues of it, and the collection of all the Alives and the Millennium Show. If they're looking for me to give them money on things I bought before, I'll usually do it. I'm sure you can't relate. Nobody can relate except me. But and I'm glad that we had this opportunity to celebrate this amazing record, and the fact that it's 50 years old this week. Which is crazy. I want to give everybody the opportunity to promote what they have going on. Anything from recent episodes of Three Sides of the Coin, Mark, that people should seek out? It's always a great show, but anything recently that you're like, oh, this is one people would probably want to find?
Well, recently we've been doing just a lot of old school Three Sides, meaning the whole premise of the show, if you're unfamiliar with it, is supposed to be 3 guys in a bar just talking about Kiss and about our favorite bands, which is very similar to what we just did here. We don't script stuff. I mean, we do have guests and stuff, and we like to, but, we get a lot of feedback on just, because between the 3 of us, we have, or 4 when Lisa's with us, all of us grew up Kiss nerds, and we're all, from the 70s. So we have a lot of Kiss experiences. Obviously, you can see here behind me, Kiss means a whole lot to me. The only thing I do want to pimp, and it's official, but not official. I can't talk about it yet. We have a very big announcement on Three Sides of the Coin coming up pretty much any day, regarding the Kiss event in November in Las Vegas. So You'll see us all out there, and again, as soon as I get the official word, we'll start spreading it. But really, really, really something really cool for the four of us on three sides, and we're gonna be a big a part of the Kiss Landlocked thing in Vegas in November. So looking forward to seeing everybody out there, and that's what's going on with us. So.
Well, I appreciate you telling us about it, and remind everybody the name of your band. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed that I didn't jot it down.
Your
band.
Yeah. I'd play in a few, but my band Left for Dead, and I'd play in a Ted Nugent tribute band. Matter of fact, if I want to pimp that, if you're in Chicago, we're heading to Chicago. We're from Detroit, but we're heading to Chicago on October 4th, playing JMO's Live, and it's going to be our first time. I've played in Chicago before, but it's the first time with this band. It's weird, really quick. It's weird being in the tribute band. The gigs that we play, and it's really bizarre. Matter of fact, really quick, just because I think you'll appreciate the story. We played at a little amphitheater here in Detroit a couple weeks ago, and Derek St. Holmes came to see us. So I'm playing my little heart away, and I look over. I'm like, "That's fucking Derek St. Holmes." he came to see us, and then after the show, he's backstage, and we get our picture taken with him, and we talk to him. And I'm like, my 15-year-old self would have went, one day. And it's those sorts of things that just blow me away. And like I said, in Chicago, we're headlining, and we've got a Thin Lizzy who I love, Thin Lizzy tribute playing before us. There's just two bands on the bill, and we're driving the 4.5 hours from Detroit to there to JMO's Live in I don't remember the city. I know it's in Chicago, but it's on the south side. So looking forward to that.
They call it all the Chicagoland area. And your Nugent tribute, should I guess that the number of Damn Yankees songs will be 0 or
0?
Okay.
We play I think you guys would appreciate, we play basically nothing past 1980. We do know Scream Dream, but we don't play it often. And I love Scream Dream, but it's basically the Double Live Gonzo set every time we play. But we also add, we play Turn It Up. We play, if you're a Ted fan and you love the Double Live Gonzo 75 through 80 catalog, you'll really, really like what we do, because, we do Need You Bad. We do Live It Up. We play the hardcore. When Ted was king,
so you're not doing If You Can't Lick 'Em, Lick 'Em?
No, that is not in the set.
Well, maybe if people call for a third encore. And by the way, Brian, something that Mark said, it made me realize a great name for a tribute band would be Nothing Past 1980. It's like a mix of, it's just like, New Year's Eve 1979. That's it. Nothing from after that. We don't play that.
That'd be good.
And of course, people should look for what's going on over at Metal Blade Records. Go to metalblade.com. The Metal Blade Museum in Las Vegas. 100 songs that define heavy metal wherever podcasts are found. And the Hulu show that I again didn't write down the name of, so I still have to get you to say it.
Into the Void. And we also moved our store into the museum as well. So when you walk into the museum, you can buy Metal Blade vinyl, CDs, t-shirts, all sorts of stuff.
When I'm on shows and I'm promoting 100 songs that define heavy metal, and I mention recent guests include, usually the reaction from the host is, "Oh wow!" So we've had Scott Ian, we've had Kerry King, and we've Martin Popoff has been on every episode. We've had Don Jamieson on twice. Yep. So and
Chris Jericho.
Yeah. Don, sorry. Martin, what book can you promote? I know you have books coming out soon, but what would you like people to know is out there?
Well, yeah, I guess the Maiden book, my site is opened up again. So the Maiden book is available, and the Dio book is available. That's this one here. And boy, did I just bump my camera?
Oh no, I made the image bigger. So
and the Deep Purple isn't out yet, but this is out in a month or so. And then I've got Kiss 76 coming out in February 76 in 2026. And the reissue, actually at my site also, there is the reissue of my Merciful Fate book and the reissue of my Max Webster book. And through my UK publisher, we've got coming the updated reissues of my Scorpions book, Accept book, and Whitesnake book.
Mark, it seems like those books are so big and heavy that you might save on shipping if you just drive up to Toronto to get those
Exactly.
from Martin.
Hey, send me a Merciful Fate one.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will. Yep.
Don, we talked about how Martin has written 130 plus books. Have you read 130 books?
Yes, I definitely have, but I've actually written over 140 books. But they were all written with AI, and I did them all this afternoon. So I don't have a release date on them yet, but they'll be out.
Is your next album going to be called Don Jamieson Alive?
Yeah, well, I do have 5 all live stand-up records on Metal Blade. So please check one or several of them out. They are all 100% live, no fix-ups in the studio. So those are available. And then my podcast is called Rockstrap with Keith Roth, and we talk to rockers about sports and sports guys about rock.
Yeah, and on the great Pantheon is home to all the best podcasts, I think,
and ours.
Except for and Don's, except for the Bladtcast, which you can subscribe on YouTube. You can find the audio version, and of course, next week we'll be talking about Spinal Tap 2, which I haven't seen yet, and I'm holding my breath. I just hope there are plenty of laughs in that. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Initial reports are good.
Yeah,
Good.
I haven't seen it either, but
yeah, I'm hoping that the initial reports are accurate because I can't wait. You were talking about Derek St. Holmes. I was always more of a David St. Hubbins guy, but it's different strokes for different folks. And of course, the show that I co-host, Who Are These Broadcasters, Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. We just did an episode about Howard Stern returning after a summer off and all the rumors that he may or may not have planted himself. And it's our biggest episode by far. So go ahead and find that either on YouTube or wherever you find podcasts. But that's all the time we have for now. And, we'll be back. There's plenty more. A lot of these great records are hitting 50. And I got to compile my list for 1976. I already know we have to talk about Aerosmith Rocks. And Brian, you might want to sit out Alice Cooper's Go to Hell. But Don, we have to hold out 3 years to talk about 50 years of Alice Cooper from the inside. But in any case,
I'm sure I'll be available.
Well, I just wanted you to get it on your calendar now. In any case, thank you all for being here. Thanks to everybody who checked it out. And we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.